Welcome back, everybody, for our 6th video in an 8-part series on the Charity Investment Governance Principles. These are a set of principles that have been put together by charities, and they were led by a steering group that consisted of the Charity Finance Group, NCVO, WCVA, ACF, and the Charities Responsible Investment Network. And the project was funded by a group of philanthropic foundations. The principles focus on the practice in England and Wales and the regulatory requirements there, but hopefully they'll be useful to those further afield as well. So I'm joined as usual by Gail Cunningham, who led on these principles. And we're almost getting to the end of our series now, with only 3 more videos to go. So this week we're going to be exploring effectiveness. And I'd like to replace that word for confidence. But Gail, do you think that's fair?
Yeah, it's really interesting that you say that, because this actually, the description talks about is the board is confident that those trustees, staff and committee members who are providing oversight of the investment have the necessary skills, experience and knowledge. As I said in some of the earlier videos, the charity investment governance principles mirror the structure of the charity governance code, so they can be used together. And obviously that's where we got the lovely word effectiveness from, which is great. When we're looking at this principle, it's really about empowering trustees to deliver on their trustee duties. So obviously all trustees are collectively responsible for the investments, but a lot of the decision making will be delegated to smaller groups of trustees or a finance and investment committee, or indeed some decisions to external investment advisors, investment managers. So this principle really explores what does a sufficient understanding of finance and investments look like, and how would that relate to the size and the complexity of the investments that the charity holds. And then it works through the different ways you can ensure that there's really effective practice going on in the oversight of investments.
Yeah, and I guess if we're talking about ensuring everyone at the table is empowered to be involved fully, then what other objectives are we going to be trying to meet here within this principle?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting, the rationale for this principle really looks at the financial factors, and obviously you'll need investment expertise and so on, depending on the size of the investments that you're holding. But it also looks at how can you effectively manage conflicts with the charity's purposes, or further the purposes through the investments in ways perhaps beyond just the financial returns, and also what are the reputational risks and things like that that you might want to look at. And those are areas where you might want the whole board involved. And then there's other decisions, particularly when you get into the nitty gritty of investments, where you might want a smaller group of trustees or trustees with the appropriate investment expertise to be involved.
Yeah, and I guess because this principle specifically has all recommends, so none of it is musts, do you think that this highlights the need for boards to be looking to ensure that they're really trying to meet best practice here? Or is this the kind of structure that we just expect to see present already at most board meetings?
Yeah, it's a really interesting one, because as you say, we've talked a little bit on the other videos about how practice is split between smaller and larger charities. There's this must, which is what the regulations say you must do. There's recommend and consider. And as you say, for larger charities, a lot of this practice is recommended. For smaller charities, in fact, a lot of the practice is just consider. It's things you can consider, because we're really conscious of the fact that particularly for smaller charities, they won't necessarily have the capacity within the trustees and within the staff team that supports those trustees to undertake huge amounts of this work. And also, there's more expected potentially of larger charities in terms of what recommended practice might look like. I should just touch on there as well what's in the principle. So it looks at recruitment and how that can really be a challenging area for charities, recruiting people with the right expertise to the trustee board or to any kind of investment committee. And so we try and help with some examples of how you can do that. And then it also looks at learning and development working effectively and how charities can really make that happen.
Yeah, and I think that's something that I just want to get onto and explore a little bit more, because we're talking about sometimes more than one trustee and trustees of suitable experience, which are sometimes difficult to recruit. So how is it that a board can decide what counts as suitable experience? And what should they do if there isn't currently the right level of experience on the board, for example?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this is a 2-step answer. I think the first thing to do is go back to principle 2, which really explores making sure the charity has sufficient finance or investment resource and expertise among the trustees and the staff and committee members who support them, commensurate with the size and complexity of the investments held. So obviously that talks about if you've got very limited investments or you're just holding cash in a bank account, what might oversight look like there? You might just need 2 of your trustees or 2 individuals on a finance committee who've got that oversight. If you've got more complex investments that go beyond a bank account but perhaps aren't very large or they're not particularly complicated, what might you need there, and what point might you need kind of financial understanding, and what does that actually mean in practice? Who might have that type of financial understanding? We talked earlier about accountants or people who run their own business and so on, and people who have that kind of financial expertise. And then obviously as you move through to charities with substantial or complex investments, when you might want to make sure you have a subcommittee of the board and what expertise that board, that subcommittee might need in terms of investment expertise. In this principle specifically, Principle 5 on effectiveness, we do look at recruitment and we look at what best practice in recruitment looks like. And we also list out a huge range of different sources that charities can go to in order to try to recruit different people with the skills that they need. But we do recognise that it can be difficult. And so having objective criteria, having a skills audit, having a role specification, especially where you're at those larger sizes, and how you advertise vacancies on LinkedIn, in other forums, through membership bodies and so on, becomes really important there, particularly when you're looking at larger charities.
Thanks, Gail. Yeah, I think it's just such an important topic, and I'm so glad that it's been expanded so much within those principles. Maybe if we've got some time now, could you just go through a case study that you think could just highlight one of these points?
Yeah, so we've got a couple in there, and as I've said on the other principles, we do have a provide feedback button. So if your charity's got a great case study, please do click on that provide feedback button and let us know, because we'd love to have more examples. We've got a couple examples in there around demystifying what it means to be a trustee, board shadowing programs run by the likes of the Smallwood Trust or the John Ellerman Foundation. We also look at different places you can recruit trustees or investment committee members from. I mentioned the ICAEW earlier, which is the Chartered Accountants body for England and Wales. They were a partner on this project. They were an advisor to the steering group, and they have a section on their website that shows volunteers with accountancy expertise that might be helpful for some charities that are looking for that. And we've got a number of other resources, places charities can go to advertise vacancies for people with that financial understanding or investment expertise.
Yeah, and one of the things that we do as investment advisors is help support training so that those that are on the board can maybe get upskilled as well, because it's really important also to help what is the current board have that development of understanding and expertise, I guess, around the table. So maybe I'll just summarise how it's really important for board members just to collectively have the right understanding and feel confident to ask questions about charity investments, and just having an effective relationship between all of the trustees, staff and the committee members, as well as any investment advisors and managers. And it's just really important for the successful management of a charity's investment portfolio. So this is our 6th video focusing on principle number 5, but the next video is going to be focusing on equity, diversity and inclusion and how this can be fed into board practice. So if you haven't yet subscribed, please go on to broadstone.co.uk and you'll be able to find a link there that can give you a notification when the next video is being released, and you can watch all the other videos if you haven't yet up to now. And just a reminder that if you go on to CIGP.org.uk, you'll be able to find all of the principles in full. So thanks very much, Gail, and see you at the next one.